when people are jerks, I don't gush over them usually, right? When somebody stabs me in the back, it doesn't engender the warm and fuzzies. And in a lot of ways, we can't control that passive feeling or emotion that we have for somebody. But like we said last week, that's not exactly what Jesus is asking of us. He's saying, okay, are you going to act loving to that person, your neighbor? Which is why we kind of pressed into it and said that the question isn't really who's my neighbor, it's how can I be a neighbor? And I think then the implication is especially to those people that I don't like. You know, my dad said, Jesus said you have to love everybody. You don't have to go on vacation with all of them.
Welcome to Let's Talk About That, the podcast where we take a deeper dive into Sunday's message and explore any questions you might have. I'm your host, AJ Stevens, joined by lead pastor Chip Parker, and I'm thrilled to be on this journey with you. Whether you're a longtime member of the Orchard or a first-time visitor, Let's Talk About That is your space to explore, reflect, and connect. Join us as we navigate the intricacies of faith, spirituality, and daily life, seeking to understand how the wisdom shared on Sundays can be applied to our modern challenges. So grab a cup of coffee, find a comfortable space, and let's dive in together. This is Let's Talk About That, where the conversation about Sunday's message never stops. All right, we're back. Monday checks notes afternoon because we had to shuffle some things around a little bit, but
It's to accommodate a special guest.
Special guest. Who are you, special guest? Tell us about yourself. Who are you?
My name is Dennille Decker, and I have been a member here at the Orchard now for about 9 years. First time listener, first time visitor.
Oh,
This is going to be your first podcast. Just listen to it live.
which
Right.
makes sense because one of the questions she asked us was, I don't understand this flavor thing. You need to help me.
Oh, yeah.
The flavor
See,
thing.
you would have had to jump on it if you'd have done some homework. But
We'll give you a second to get in there. So 9 years.
9 years.
That's pretty incredible.
yeah, man, it has been 9 years.
Yep.
How did you stumble into the Orchard 9 years ago?
So several of my friends were already coming here. This is when Matt and Carrie Kaysen still lived here, and then the Grays and the Wombles went here, and then one of my longtime best friends, Abby Chastain, went, and I had 2 young kids at the time, and everybody just kept telling me how great it was, and I came and been here ever since.
I love it. That's awesome. And you were at the rink 9 years ago, I assume. Okay.
Yeah.
Still at the rink. Okay.
Yeah,
Sweet.
I met Dennille when she was working at the chamber, and I got roped in, I think, by Abby to go help out at the chamber, and so it just kind of went downhill from there.
That's all right. I mean, that's how he helped us on many volunteer events, and we can see a good sucker when we
No doubt.
see him coming
No doubt.
away.
No doubt.
So that's what you did.
Yes.
So outside of, being an Orchard attender for 9 years, what else do you do? What does Dennille's life look like?
So what I do now, it's a joke for me to try to explain it to people, but my previous background was in community development. I was the director of the Chamber of Commerce also for 9 years. That's my number today, I guess. And while I was in that role, I had the opportunity to meet a real estate developer who was coming to Lake City to redevelop the historic Blanche Hotel downtown. And so I initially took this job with a real estate developer to oversee that project. And once it got off the ground, we got it built, we got through all the city, red tape, permitting, that sort of thing.
Which was super easy, I'm sure.
Super easy.
Yeah.
It was supposed to take, the whole construction process was supposed to take 15 months and cost $12 million. It ended up taking about 24 months and $19 million. We opened our doors March 1st, 2020. So you know what happened just a few weeks later after that. COVID shut it down.
The hits keep coming.
Right. So for a long time, I really got the Blanche up and going. And my office is still here in Lake City, but I don't really do much with the Blanche anymore, although that's what most people associate me with.
Sure.
I work on the corporate level for the real estate developer. I do the sales and marketing, and recently I've taken on human resources.
Oh.
Yeah, which is they totally tricked me with that one. It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. We have
Great. Sounds great.
Yeah, we have 75 employees in 5 states.
This is with what you're currently doing.
Yep, IDP Properties is the company that I work for. We have, like I said, 75 employees in 5 states. We have 36 properties. We're primarily an affordable housing developer.
Okay.
But we do have, like the Blanche, and we have a Marriott Tribute Hotel in Macon, Georgia. We have a couple different outlier properties and things that I do. So I basically try to help our company go into different communities, tell them like what we can do for their community, help talk about underserving populations. Affordable housing is a huge need.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just try to change the stigma, because everybody wants, like, they understand the need for affordable housing as long as it's not in my backyard or in my community.
As long as it doesn't cramp my style.
Right.
Yeah,
and so, like, we go in and we say, like, look, this is, like, what we can do. This is the impact that we can have. And, yeah, so I just kind of do a little bit of everything, but I'm still based here in the Blanche, so I'm still...
So it sounds like you're, real estate tycoon, property manager, sales pitcher, because you got to probably sell a lot of these people on this kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're also the bad guy in human resources.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Bad guy or the good guy.
So,
it depends on.
That's right. So the office is still at the Blanche.
So my personal office is, I still work out of Lake City. Our headquarters is out of Valdosta, Georgia.
Okay.
But I still work in Lake City every day, and I still do have... Nothing goes by at the Blanche because I still don't have like my hand in. That'll always be my baby.
And so you were there like when it was being redone and everything.
Yep.
So is it haunted? Is the Blanche haunted?
Okay, this is what I tell people. I have been there all hours of the day, all hours of the night. I would not say it's haunted, but there are many times that I think it's cursed.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like stuff's going wrong.
Just listen. It's, I remind myself, it's a 120 plus year old building. So there's obviously going to be issues. But the things that happen there are just like beehives get stuck in the attic, and crazy things that you don't ever hear about happening any place happen there.
Yeah. So I get, a lot of interesting comments about the Blanche when people start looking up the history about it. So AJ, have you looked at the history of the Blanche?
No, I haven't. But I feel like before you go into that, you should tell us, and maybe Dennille too, like, I'm hearing this, and we have dozens of listeners, right? We just said that, and not all of them are from Lake City. So, like, what is the Blanche? Like, I heard you say the Blanche. What is the Blanche?
Good call.
What capacity is it function?
So, the Blanche, like I mentioned, historically was a hotel. It was originally built in 1902. And then 1923 and 25, it built on the two wings of the building. Now, it's Lake City's first mixed-use facility. We have 22 residential apartments. We have 14 hotel rooms. We are an active hotel now. We have 18 office spaces. Then we have 12 retail spaces on the bottom floor. And we also have event space, which is probably what we're most known for now, weddings and events.
Church parties.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yep. Courtyard, whatever. We'll do anything.
Is the Blanche one of our sponsors?
The Blanche is now a sponsor of the podcast.
Shout out to one of our sponsors.
There we go.
The Blanche. That's great.
Yeah, we love throwing out sponsorships.
Yeah, it's great. Not that you guys or any of our sponsors actively
do anything,
but we like to shout our friends out and the things that they do. So
so check us out at theblanche.com. You can come. It's a fun staycation. Interesting place to stay. It's beautiful. It's
staycation. Love that.
Yeah,
that's my Chamber Day words.
Love that.
And this is probably the perfect segue back to what you were going to say, the staycation at the Blanche, and you said, or we're going to say, you're asking me, like, have you been there?
Well, have you, the Blanche has, like, a sordid history of sorts.
I didn't know this.
Yeah. So,
intriguing.
Dennille, why don't you unpack the famous Blanche resident? And
the most famous is Al Capone.
Oh. Okay.
So everybody wants to know, like, which room was Al Capone's, and I tell them
it's her office.
No, I tell them whichever one you want to rent. I'll give you a plaque that says Al Capone's office was here. No, so Johnny Cash, Al Capone, those were some of the more notable people that have come and stayed. The rumored Al Capone legitimate room is now an office space on the third floor. So, and it's rumored that his was in the corner so he could have his guards on lookout from both sides.
Supposedly, he would stay there when he was going down to Miami and then the East Coast and stuff like that. That was his haunt here in Lake City.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
it's intriguing.
So. That's the question.
But
is it haunted?
You would be shocked at, no, you probably wouldn't be, at the number of people who write in and want to come and do ghost tours. And
really?
Do you let them?
No, we
could make that interesting.
Did we just find supplement income?
Well, because here's the thing. It's we don't want to open that door because, okay, let's say they found something. So then have we scared half the population off, or have we gained?
Yeah,
So we just decided we'll just be a normal hotel. Yeah. You can believe what you want to believe.
You got to be careful about some of those ghost pranks or whatever. So I was in college, and there was a guy who was a student that cleaned the bottom floor of the dorm, had classrooms and a lot of the labs for the science department, and he cleaned it every night. And so some guys were going to prank him by hiding in the dumpster when he went to go like dump the stuff.
I love this.
And so we're all watching from the window of the dorm, and we see him come out, and he gets to the dumpster and he opens it up. Dude jumps out of the dumpster with this mask on. Guy punches him in the face, takes this massive bag of garbage, slings it on him, and all tails. And we're like, oh, that did not go the way we thought it was going to go.
But it was still electric. Maybe not
to watch.
Maybe not the desired outcome.
It was great to watch, but
still very
glad I didn't draw the short straw of being in the dumpster.
I love it. So you have that's career Dennille. But what else we got going on? Because we have some kiddos.
Right. I have 2 girls. Just started 6th grade and then just started 10th grade.
Okay.
And
so professional mom.
Professional. I mean, I think I've got it down. Every time I think I have it down, they throw another personality or wrench or development in or sign up for another activity to involve me in.
So teenage girls, as scary as I think.
I don't know if it's because I'm a girl.
I mean, yeah.
It has not been as bad as what everybody made it out to be.
Look, teenage girls terrify me. They're the meanest creature God ever made.
Well, that's what they always say at the school. And I'm also big into like the school, the PTO program at all their schools and all that sort of stuff. And the administration always tells me there's nothing mean like a girl. Like you don't have to worry about the boy fights; it's the girl fights you have to worry about.
That's right. No, it just like that. That terrifies me. The thought of like teenage girls, which glad we have, just the boys or whatever. But those teenage girls, when I was in student ministry, pastoring in Mayo, like Leanne, tag, you're in. You go talk to the girls. Yeah. I can handle the guys. You go talk to the girls.
The hardest thing about the girls, I will say, is like they can go to bed, and more so my oldest one, Lila. She's 15, going on 25, but she'll go to bed and like she's happy and everything's great, and then like the next morning you wake up and she's just like, you didn't put the ice in her Stanley right. It's like you don't know, you just don't know like what you're.
I love the ice in her Stanley.
Yeah,
that's phenomenal. That
makes me think. So, are you familiar with the Enneagram? Mm-hmm. Do you know what you are on the Enneagram?
I remember I did so many dang personality tests.
Dennille was a 3-wing 2.
Okay, all right. You should
100,000%. Dennille's a 3-wing 2.
Okay. One of the things that I will probably do to my kids one day as they develop a little bit further along is try to nail down their Enneagram.
Well, supposedly they have to. You got to get out of childhood to be able to do your Enneagram, because your Enneagram number's shaped in childhood.
So like what you think is old enough to have a solid or not quite yet?
No,
so you think
he's still
late high school before you can?
I think early adulthood more than late adolescence.
So maybe by the time they get their frontal lobe.
There you go.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that is one very interesting thing, like especially as like I'm watching Lila grow into, she started taking college classes, and she's very meticulous, and it cracks me up because I'm like, oh my gosh, she is literally me again. Yeah. Like, whereas Eva's just like, woo,
I love that.
Eva may be a 7 already.
She is like good time, like flipping at 10 o'clock at night, like ready to go, happy, like just full on all the time. And Lila's very much like, Eva, it is bedtime. You have to get up. We have school in the morning.
So that's pretty consistent.
Lila's going to be president probably.
Yeah. Well, so that's what I was going to say. So our pediatrician told us, like, when specifically with girls, and we didn't have a girl, but he was explaining to us like we didn't have a girl first.
Okay. I'm like, you Sawyer's offended.
But when we were talking to him about Dax, he said typically this is what it looks like with boy-girl siblings, what it looks like with girl-girl siblings and boy-boy siblings. And one of the things I remember him saying about girl-girl, because we have a niece and her sister. Girl. Matt, Matt and Kelly's kids. It was usually like 90% of the time, the oldest girl is going to be the CEO, and they're always going to mom down. And so they're going to be the mom figure in the sibling relationship. And typically that leaves room for the youngest one to be like, okay, well, if you've got everything handled, then I'm throwing caution to the wind, and I'm just going to be who I am.
Just going to send it.
Yeah, we're just going to send it. So it sounds like that's exactly what you got going on.
So I think it was right. Lila, I wouldn't say mom, but what CEO was a great word for her.
Yeah, she... And it's funny because it's the same scenario. Like, I'm the oldest, and I have a younger brother and a younger sister. And I mean, to this day, neither one of them will really make like a real decision without like checking in. Like, do you think this is right? Like, even on the way here, I was talking to my sister. Any little thing, but
phenomenal.
The roles stick for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love it.
So I think this is a great place to bring in the question.
Yeah. So, okay, that is a phenomenal segue. What is your flavor? So when we ask you,
if you were a flavor, what flavor would you be?
What would you be? Yeah.
So we'll give you a little bit of context.
Like a flavor of ice cream?
It doesn't matter.
Whatever. So some of the answers that we've gotten, AJ, I said was like that, 5 gum? Remember the 5 gum? And you do 5 gum and then have a swig of water and it's like super intense, but then it kind of chills out, so...
so you put another piece in.
Somebody, that's right. when Mary Beth was on here, somebody told Mary Beth, I feel like you're strawberry. And Mary Beth goes, thank you. Whatever that means. So we've had black coffee. Right. So anything.
Yeah.
You just
I would say if I had to tell you what my flavor was, it'd probably be like a sweet and sour.
Okay.
Because I can be really sweet and I can be really sour.
Yeah.
Depending on the scenario that I need to be.
This reminds me of one of our interactions today. I'm just kidding. We won't go there.
You're not going to open that can of worms up.
We had brought in Dennille to do our Easter promo. That's what it was, right? And we said, and Dennille you're a professional.
She's a professional
when it comes to videography and things
so
of
I
that
thought,
nature.
yeah.
And so I'm like, this is a layup. Dennille's going to crush this. And by the end of it, I want to be clear, you did crush it. You did a phenomenal job.
I still never figured out the difference from the beginning to the end, but nonetheless, he was happy with it. So he gave up.
Did he say something along the lines of, hey, how about this time try to do it like you don't hate your life or something?
So it was so fun. I mean, here's going back to my chamber days. Like, I'm just so used to public speaking and like, I guess like it's a very like election, like, I'm selling something and I have that tone in my voice. So it's just a very formal tone. And he's like, can you do it again where you're inviting people in your living room? And I'm like, well, if I was talking to a group of people, this is how I would talk to them. Like, be clear, in my living room, this is how I would do it. Like, I don't know how to do it any other way. And he's like, all right, how about doing it like you're not at the polar bear, like the polar bear exhibit where I'm pressing the button. Because I was just coming on.
That's where the polar bear exhibit comes from?
Yes.
Oh, man. I'm so sorry. Sorry.
It was great. I listen, my friends had a heyday with that because, like I said, like I spent a lot of money and a lot of time becoming a quote unquote trained public speaker, and he just whipped it out. I mean, that day it's all in one meal swoop.
Oh, sweet and sour. That's great. I love it. So you got moments of sweet and moments where you're gonna be the bad guy in human resources and get crap done.
Right. So I think that's funny. She's talking about your friends had a field day with that because I get that. Last night we had a night of worship. At the Orchard, and it was a great night. We can talk about that for a minute, but one of my favorite parts of last night, and this is going to reveal my unspiritual side, I can't tell you how good it was for my soul that Michael forgot to announce dollar offering. I wish you guys could have set in meetings on Monday mornings with us, be like, hey, did you guys announce dollar offering today? Maybe we did in one of the 2 services, forgot in the other one. But when Michael forgot dollar offering and had to redo, that just did my soul good. So I feel your friends just like, hey, one for the little guy.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, which was Michael. Shout out to Michael. Michael, I don't know if you can hear me. He's in the office next to us, but he did a great job with his portion.
Yeah.
Did a phenomenal job. But I think the reason it was so good is because he didn't talk about dollar.
That's so funny.
He was supposed to.
So Dennille, what did you think about Night of Worship last night?
But you had a good.
You had a good reason,
right? So my dad turned 75 this Friday, and we had our birthday celebration for him last night. And so we had our family dinner, and we were celebrating King Denny. His name is Dennis, but the kids call him Denny.
That's awesome.
That's great. 75, man.
Yep.
Is he? You don't mind me asking? Is he like getting around pretty good? Still pretty.
Listen, my dad was an elected official for about 30 years. He's a public defender. He's an attorney, and whenever he retired, he was like, "Yeah, I'm out." Like he wasn't like one of those people that were like, "I'm going to do all this sort of stuff." He is getting around good. He is doing things. Specifically, he loves to watch Gunsmoke. That's his daily his daily fix. But he's doing good. He's loving life. He's never been like a big hunter or fisher or like golfer. He was always, going back to like our personality type, some very similar to him. He was always kind of a worker.
Yeah.
And like wanting to do stuff like that. So his highlight is for everybody to come over, and we're coincidentally neighbors. So it's very easy. Like we live on
happens, never just happens.
Right. He made sure that happened.
That was no coincidence.
Right. And my sister too. So we all live there. My brother lives in Jacksonville.
So the Gunsmoke thing, there is like a certain age where Gunsmoke becomes a part of your personality. Mm-hmm. I think when I was pastoring in Mayo, and we would have stuff in the evenings, whether it be Sunday night church, Wednesday night, a meeting or whatever, there was 2 deacons who always said, all right, we got about 20 minutes till Gunsmoke comes on. Gotta go.
I have a nephew who's 4, and his name's William, and so he'll go over and he'll say, "We had to watch Matt Dillon today."
I know William.
Yeah,
I know William.
You know William.
William's a mess. He's a good kid.
Phenomenal.
Here's what I really want to know about your dad. You had a big life event happen within the last month or so. Yeah?
I did, yeah.
I want to know what your dad thinks about that.
So what he's talking about is I did just recently get engaged.
Hey.
Yeah, you did.
Yay.
Yeah, you did.
It's great. We love it.
Lucky Miles. We're so lucky.
At Miles, we asked him your flavor, sweet and sour. He backing you up on that?
I don't know. He might say sour than sweet. No, but I mean, my parents are super, super excited. Everybody's super excited, the kids. And so Miles is in for it. You know, he's never been married, doesn't have any children, and grew up in a boy household, you know, brothers,
Just
boy
a
cousins.
straight teenage girl.
And went full in with the girls.
That's awesome. That guy.
Yeah, but it's they love him, and it's worked out.
That's awesome.
He switched to being a girl dad real quick.
Real fast.
Real quick.
Awesome. That's great. That's great. Well, speaking of that, is the last thing on the front end here I'll ask you, because we do want to dive into some of the serious stuff. We tell people we'll get there eventually, but we like to have fun on the front end. Girl dad, girl mom, back to school is happening right now. And
Yes.
you guys are in the transition still. Kids are back. I want to get especially as somebody who volunteers in the school system and does all that kind of stuff too, I want your pro tip for parents. The best pro tip you have for transitioning back to school. Go.
Absolutely, without a doubt, it's the 7 Ps. You don't know the 7 Ps?
I do not, but I'm going to write them down. Go ahead, hang on. Wait.
All right, now this is a church
3,
podcast.
2, 7 Ps.
She was ready.
Okay, now I realize this, but it's prior proper planning prevents piss poor performance.
Okay.
So that's a military
7
term.
Ps.
Yep, my dad was also in the military.
Okay. I'd never heard that.
7 Ps.
Okay.
And so anyway, the whole bottom line of that is you got to be prepared. And especially with girls, there's no ambiguity. The night before, our lunches are packed. Our clothes are laid out. To this day, they will lay them on the dining table. Wow. You know, they're 11 and 15. Like, they know what they're going to wear. We have it approved, because what happens in the morning is chaos, and everybody's trying to. You know, this is the first year that Eva's school doesn't start. She's not in elementary school, so school, we're not leaving the house at 7:15. So there's a little bit more time in the morning, but not enough time for the chaos of, I can't find my jeans. I can't find this. I can't. They both are on school cheer, and they do competitive cheer and tumbling. And so, you know, a lot of times it's directly after school, we're going to another thing. So it's their responsibility, and they have to lay it out, and they have to show me that it's laid out. So
you got that, big guy?
7 Ps, baby.
7 Ps.
I'm locked and they all give me anxiety. That's not how I live my life.
Enroll your kids in a school that has school uniforms. And
Touche.
then you don't have to worry about it.
Like, hey, I can dress you. You know, I
That
say
knocks
that.
down like at least 3 of these Ps if you do.
Look, I say that, and I got a text this morning from Leanne, who teaches at Belmont, where both the boys go. And I took Haddon to breakfast this morning. He's starting 9th grade. And so we're starting this new thing. He's in high school. So on Mondays, he and I are going to go to Panera for breakfast. We're going to kind of do Bible study together. Really, you know, start engaging in discipleship with him, you know, growing up. And so we left early, went to Panera, dropped him off at school. About 8:15, 8:20, I get a text from Leanne. And she goes, Chip, he's in black shorts. And their school dress code is navy shorts, and then you have the school-approved shirts and everything.
You're colorblind.
I'm colorblind.
That's on her.
No idea.
Your wife knows this.
I had no
That's
idea.
on Leanne. I'm sorry. I got your back on that.
She was like, I don't think anybody's going to care. But, you know, if they do, you're going to have to run him a pair of navy shorts.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah, that's what we're in the dress code right now.
Yeah.
The high school, YOLO, they can do whatever they want in their dress code right now. It seems, but Eva's. And she's also very tall, like me, and with a lot of legs. Mm-hmm. And so things that seem normal for most people, you know, or just look extremely short. So we've started that, like, you got to pack something in your book bag, because I'm not always able to run up the road to get it to you.
So it just made me think of something, though. It's not super recent, but a little bit of front end. So Eva went to camp with us for the first time this year. What'd you think of camp? What was her experience for that? Because she is a YOLO.
Yeah,
okay.
She's a good time. She is a great time. Let me tell you more about what was Eva's highlight of camp. I think Chip might already know. But so while they were there, you know, mentioned she's entering a little bit into a boy crazy phase, you know, like
Picked up on that.
Right. No. And
Dangerous.
the rule that she came back was Chip says no purple.
No purple.
No purple.
It's a great rule.
Right. So she comes back and she never actually spoke to this poor child there, but she just saw him from a distance. They waved. Somebody in the lunchroom said that he liked her and something else and something else. And so she knew what church he went to.
Gosh.
I've been waiting to tell you this story. So she knew what church he went to, and just in case anybody's listening, I'm going to use a different name. We're just going to call him John.
John Doe.
John from Umatilla Baptist Church.
First Baptist Umatilla.
Okay, all right.
So let me tell you, Eva Decker was so clever. I'm like, oh my gosh. She got home, and the only thing she wanted to do the minute she stepped foot into our house was, I don't even have Facebook anymore. She got onto my sister's Facebook. She looked up Umatilla Baptist Church to try to find photos of said John. When she couldn't find it there, she went to the camp. What, Centrifuge? Is that what it was?
Centrifuge.
She looked up the camp to try to find photos of him there. Then saw that they were having VBS and tried to talk us into driving her down to VBS.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm like, Eva,
man.
we got to move on from John from Umatilla.
Yeah.
I'm like, do you even know where Umatilla is?
It's somewhere near camp. I don't know. So
That's crazy.
Even a couple of the girls were, they had this area camp that we like let them hang out in or whatever. And one of the areas is like a open area with a gazebo that goes back towards some of the other dorms that Umatilla was staying in. And so Eva and two other girls were not with the rest of the girls. And it's like, y'all know where they're at? I know. And I was like, I know where they're at. And so I started walking that way. And Eva and the two other girls are coming. And there's two boys that are walking behind them or kind of beside them. They see me coming. And like, I make eye contact with the girls, like, hey, girls. And the guys just like peel off. And I just yell, that's right. You better run away, little boys. Go on. These are our girls. And I look at them, I say, hey, that's 3 girls and 2 boys. That was really close to purple.
Flirting with the line.
They're like, it's not purple. We had more girls. Like, okay, that wasn't purple.
Flirting with the line.
Yeah, she loved it. I was a little bit concerned. You know, she's been to a couple friends' house, but not like extended time away you know, and I thought like maybe she would.
Nah, she was here.
She was
here for it.
She was there for the good time.
She's going to come hang out with us on Wednesday nights?
Well, yes.
She's getting a little nervous, a little cold feet.
No, she hasn't. We've just had a couple obligations so far, but yeah.
Okay,
I think she will.
Me and her sound like spirit animals, so
Yes.
I think she'll appreciate it. That's good. All right, we need to get into some of this serious-ish stuff, so that's good. I'm glad we got to know the woman behind the microphone a little bit better.
There you go.
That's phenomenal.
Now,
So,
what people are never going to know is how many times Chris had to edit this because you told her to do a better job.
I did not. Let the record show I did not, and I think she's crushing it. So we've been in a series now, kind of, and you mentioned this from stage at one point. It's true. Like, we pick our sugar stick series, the one that we think has a ton of value, for back to school.
Oh yeah, you have a window between the end of summer, back to school, and the beginning of football season, hunting season, and that's like prime time on the church calendar.
Yes,
so 100%.
Attendance reflects it year after year. That's when people are getting back in the swing of things. This is the swing of things in many ways for them.
Have to go repent for those vacations.
Yeah, man. But one of the series we picked is called Answers from Jesus, and so personally, one of my favorite ones that we've done is questions for Jesus. Man, you got me all domed up. You're all running
The
around.
first one was questions from Jesus too.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay, questions from Jesus. This one, answers from Jesus, as he responds to other people's questions. And first week we unpacked and said, okay, Jesus is the king, and we've talked around that already. Last week we said, hey, the goal is to love God. That's the thing that we want to get right, love people. And then this week the question, who is your neighbor? And the heart of this question comes from the fact that this guy's asking Jesus, okay, you want me to love my neighbor? Who are you telling me to love? Because I got some unlovable people in my life.
Yeah,
Who are you
100%.
really getting at here?
There's some undertone in that it's not just who is my neighbor. It's like, have you met my neighbor?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you know what you're saying then? Because what exactly does that mean? Because there's some people that really push the limit on that. So yeah, 100%. That's the implication behind that question.
Yeah. So for both of you, I'm curious. Really, you first, Dennille, because Chip, he preached this, so he's going to have
All the answers.
maybe some revelation, maybe something that he shared with us already on Sunday. But what was your biggest takeaway from that conversation this past week? Just a moment, or a piece of that stuck with you, that resonated with you?
I mean, just the phrase "simple isn't always easy." I mean, that was like the first thing that popped to my head. And while when you first said that yesterday, you know what I thought of before before any of biblical things. So I talked about earlier, my friend Abby Chastain. You know, she's a cook, and she grew up in a cooking family, and she's always
everything.
Yeah, and she's always like, "It's so easy." She's like, "There's like 10 ingredients," or you know, whatever it is. And I was like, "No, just because you think it's simple does not mean that it's easy. It's simple to you because you've got 25 chicken stock bases and all this other stuff ready to go." And, this blend of things, but like just that was just a great thing that popped in my head is, simple is not always easy.
No, it is not.
It's easy to say those words that you're going to try to love your neighbor and love everybody around you, but it's really hard to actually do that.
Yeah, 100%. I think that, ties back to last week too. When we say it's simple but not easy, that's because our feelings really, in a lot of ways, are out of our control, especially that passive response, right? Because when people are jerks, I don't gush over them usually, right? When somebody stabs me in the back, it doesn't engender the warm and fuzzies. And in a lot of ways, we can't control that passive feeling or emotion that we have for somebody. But like we said last week, that's not exactly what Jesus is asking of us. He's saying, okay, are you going to act loving to that person, your neighbor? Which is why we kind of pressed into it and said that the question isn't really who's my neighbor, it's how can I be a neighbor? And I think then the implication is especially to those people that I don't like, and it's the vacation rule, that my dad, this will stick with me, one of those things my dad said for the rest of my life. And if you were Lake City, you heard it. If you weren't, you didn't. But, my dad said, Jesus said you have to love everybody. You don't have to go on vacation with all of them.
Right.
And so that's kind of where I'm at. It's the vacation rule. I have to choose to act in love. That doesn't mean I have to say, hey, let's load up and go for a week.
So I'm hearing this and I understand what you're saying, yet to your point, and one that I resonate with, right, as somebody listening, potentially, I'm not saying me in particular, but, somebody listening, you've just told me that my emotions transcend, in many ways, my response, and my initial response anyway. So what does it look like? How can I move from, okay, this is simple, it's not easy, but I want to move from this simple thing that I should be able to do to at least making it easier to step into? Is that clear? Like, how do I get there? How do I go from simple? Yeah. I understand the concept, but I need to do it, and it's hard to do it.
So I think maybe the first thing that we have to understand is that we are not slaves to our feelings and our impulses. Like, I think there's a rise in popular culture that says, if I think this way, if I feel this way, if it comes naturally, then let's just go with it, right? It can't possibly be wrong. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of in my life, right? Like, there's at least going to be 2 or 3 times this week that I'm going to feel like punching a kid in the throat at a baseball field, and yet I will go to jail if I follow that impulse and that feeling, right? That's the wrong thing to do. I'll never forget, Pastor Rick Warren was on Larry King Live, and this is especially pointed because Larry King has a pretty spotted, relationship history. And they were talking about, homosexuality, and, it was when a Burgerfell was coming out. And Larry King looks at Rick Warren and says, hey, are you saying that you feel like people who have these natural desires toward same-sex attractions should suppress those? And Rick Warren says, yeah, that's what I'm saying, but I'm not asking them to do something that I'm not asking everybody to do. And Larry King's like, what do you mean? He goes, well, I have the natural desire to sleep with every good-looking woman that I see, but my wife appreciates it when I suppress that, you know? And so it's so weird to me that we think that just because we feel this way towards someone, that we have to act that way towards someone, And that's one thing that I've always appreciated about Dennille is that there are certain people that I have a feeling probably were not her favorite people, but yet she was able to, especially with her stuff at the chamber, hey, I'm gonna treat you well, I'm gonna treat you professionally, I'm gonna smile, I'm not gonna choke you out or pull your hair just because I want to right now. And I think that we look at that in the professional realm and say, okay, yeah, that's a thing. But it is in our personal realm too. You don't have to be captive to how you feel about someone. You can choose to act in a way that's loving towards them. And then to get back to really, I think the heart of your question is, the more you do that, it's just like training a muscle. It's going to get easier to say, I'm going to be intentional with my actions, not responsive to my emotions.
Yeah, it's good. So do you feel like, Dennille, that's something that, I mean, it sounds like you at least got good at it. Do you feel like there's a moment where you were like, I mean, this was really difficult and this is kind of when it got easier, or this is how I learned to navigate that better, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that exactly when you think about it in a professional setting, like, you know that you are never going, well, most professionals, I should say, especially, you're never going to speak disrespectfully to a client or a customer or, a community member that's coming in to talk to you. You're able to, put on that professionalism and make sure that they're treated well, because at the end of the day, they're the customer. But I think exactly what he just said, when it's more on a personal level, it's a lot harder to be like, well, I don't have to be nice to you. Like, you're not paying my, quote unquote bills. You're not
going to get fired.
Right. Like, nothing's going to happen to me if I have an attitude towards you or if I speak disrespectfully to you. And, the biggest way that I trust me, I still have, moments of not being able to do that. But I think the biggest thing that's helped me kind of overcome a lot of that is just really trying to think about things from other people's perspective, where they're coming from, when they're nasty or when they're annoying or when you don't want to be around them, that a lot of times they are acting out of emotion, or they're acting because they're stressed, or, specifically, like, we have a lot of people, like the last couple weeks, staying at the Blanche with the hurricane. Well, they're frantic. They can't get in. They didn't get their email with their door codes. And then, you answer the phone. I want to refund. They're just 90 to nothing, ready to get you. And you have to remember, okay, they're displaced. They're stressed. They're traveling. You just don't ever know what's going on in everybody else's life that's making them be a quote unquote nasty person.
Yeah.
So the more you can just try to put yourself in other people's perspective.
I think that's really good. That's something that, I've started to talk about with folks and have conversation. Even, Leanne and I having this conversation, having it with Haddon as he's growing up, and just having it with, friends, folks from the church. It's simple, but I think it goes to what you just said, Dennille, is like, nobody's the bad guy in their own story.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, nobody sees themselves as, I'm being a jerk, I'm being rude, right? And if they act like that, it's because they feel justified in it. They're vindicating themselves or someone else, or they're standing up to right or wrong, whatever. And so they're not the bad guy, they're the good guy, But then when we respond in kind in our story, well, they're the bad guy that's being irrational, and we're the good guy who's putting them in their place. And I think that that's just something that you've got to be able to let go of, because like, they're not the bad guy in their story, and there's no way that even if you were wrong that you would see yourself as the bad guy in your own story. And so I think that goes back to something we say all the time at the Orchard. You just can't judge someone else by their actions and you by your intentions. You have to kind of walk through that. And as cliche as it is by that point, that's the whole question. What would Jesus do?
Yeah.
Like, not what do I want to do, but like, what is the proper way? What is the loving thing to do here? And one of the things that I love about that thought is, nowhere does this say that because Dennille is trying to love her neighbor as herself, that when, Karen, cusses her out because her sheets weren't the proper thread count, that Dennille has to say, oh, yes, ma'am, I'm so sorry, please forgive me. Like, that doesn't mean that you're a whipping boy for people who act that way. It just means there's a way to handle that situation that is still loving at the end of the day.
Yeah, there was I think it was an Instagram reel, which is, to your point, a TikTok 3 weeks later. But
that's right.
It was an Instagram reel, right. And this guy was conducting a street interview, and somebody walks in front of their street interview, and the interviewer was like, can you believe that just happened? The guy who's interviewing is like, man, don't contribute to malice what can be contributed to ignorance. Like, everyone's living in their own world. I saw
that like 3 months ago, yeah.
Yeah, everyone's living in their own world. Like, why are you mad at the guy? Like, he's just doing his thing, and you're doing your thing, and everybody's in their own spot kind of thing, I think, to that point. But so let me ask you, go ahead.
I want to lean in, because I told you, this is something that I have admired about Dennille, watching her, professionally and even personally, and it's the joke. It's the sweet and sour joke. Yeah. Like, you're a very kind person, a very outgoing person, but when you need to be, you're a very firm person and, hitting something head on. How do you balance those two not just as a professional, but also as a believer? How do you balance that?
It's hard. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, like, I have a bit of a temper. I
feel that.
I have a temper, and I am not afraid to. I'm not afraid to let people know that they have crossed the line, or they have offended me, or they're not doing how what my expectations are for them to behave. You know, whether that be my children, whether that be poor Miles, whether that be anybody, like people that I work with. I mean, like, I do have a very like high set of standards, and I expect people to meet those. So I have to remember sometimes to, just because something is my natural ability or something that I'm good at or something that's come super, like, you should just know that. Like, what do you mean you don't know how to do X, Y, and Z? You have to remember to say, like, okay, all right, think about going back to what am I missing? What am I missing that they're trying? And I'm, sitting here upset with them because they're not seeing the full picture that maybe it's on me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not explaining it to them. Maybe I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do to teach them to do what I need them to do. But, even to like go into like a store clerk, listen, I love customer service. I give exceptional customer service. I want exceptional customer service. And you can see the problem with this is very few places do you receive exceptional.
Like, could you write me a list of those places?
Yeah. Do you receive it? And so I have to, like, I will find myself, like what you were saying about, not only are you right, you have to make sure they know why you were right.
Oh, yeah. They're wrong. You have to make sure they know they're wrong.
Right. I mean, that's how, like, I want to say to people, like, you realize how you just completely botched this transaction. I want you to know that I would have come back and I would have done X, Y, Z. And then it's like, when I walk out of there, I'm like, what was the point of that?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, but I fall, very short of that to, like, I feel like I have to, like, let everybody know how they've just disappointed me.
Yeah. Chip tells me I do that all the time too, so don't feel bad.
One of the I think that might have been where I first coined that. It's not enough for you to be right, is it? You gotta let.
I could tell when Chip's processing me. For example, the minute he walked into the night of worship, our room last night, he saw my shirt and he immediately started processing. And I had an over-under in my head, 5 minutes, and it took him just over the 5-minute mark to say something about
that's
it.
maturity.
But I could tell he was processing immediately, and I could tell.
In my defense, it took me a minute to figure out what I was processing. I was like, "What?"
But
something's different.
I'll just say, Chip's always processing, and one of the things he's processed about, it took him a while before he finally was able to put it to words in his head. Was like, you don't just need to be right. You need to make sure that people know they were wrong.
Yeah, I get that.
maybe guilty.
Yeah,
I get that.
And I'm kind of right there too. So I think that's why it's easy to see. But I think we talked about this. We haven't done a nerd out segment. So we have this podcast we call it a nerd out segment. We kind of go a little bit deeper into something. So maybe this is a good time for us to have a nerd out segment that we haven't had in a while. What I love about that, love your neighbor as yourself, is Jesus didn't come up with that on his own. Like, that was a quotation from the Old Testament, and it was a quotation from Leviticus chapter 19. And if you read Leviticus, number one, God bless you, because it's not the easiest book in the Bible to read.
It's usually where Bible reading plans tap.
Yeah, that's where people are like, you know what? It was a good January. It was a good January. But if you look at Leviticus 19, it's primarily about how we treat other people. Like, what are we to do? And verse 18 is where we get the love your neighbor as yourself. That's the first place we see that in Scripture. But let me read to you just kind of the immediate context of that. That's verse 17 and 18. Let me read this to you and see if it changes the way you might think about love your neighbor. This is what Leviticus says. Chapter 19, starting verse 17. It says, "Do not harbor hatred against your brother. Rebuke your neighbor directly, and you will not incur guilt because of him. Do not take revenge or bear a grudge against members of your community, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord." So what I love about that, right, is it starts out, don't harbor hatred, don't bear a grudge, love your neighbor as yourself, but smack dab in the middle of that, but, if you need to, rebuke them directly. Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't mean that you can't say hard things.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you can't be like, hey, you were wrong right here. It doesn't mean that there's no confrontation, but you have to package that around, I'm not doing this out of hatred. I'm doing this out of love, because love desires the best, right? And I'm not going to hold a grudge about it. I'm not going to say, well, I remember that one time that they XYZ and they said they were sorry, but I'm not sure they were. It's kind of like, no, I'm not going to hold a grudge. Love doesn't remember wrongs, right? We talk about that. And so I love kind of the balance in that is loving your neighbor as yourself isn't being a whipping post or a pushover. It's not like cowing down and never hurting anybody's feelings. It's just about, hey, I'm going to act with integrity and intentionality in everything I do. I'm not going to, if you skip back up just to verse 15, it's about showing partiality to the poor or the rich. I'm not going to show partiality to people by, excusing it in one person and confronting it in another. I'm going to act with intentionality and integrity, and that's what it means to love my neighbor, not just to never hurt anybody's feelings.
It's fascinating. So you're reading that and you're asking me, okay, process it through this lens, and I'm flipping through it in my mind. First thing that pops into my head, love covers a multitude of sins, right? The second thing in that transition in my brain is James 5, verse 20, where he says this, 19 and 20, he says, my brothers and sisters, if one of you should wander from the truth and someone should bring that person back, remember this, whoever turns a sinner from the error of their way will save them from death and cover a multitude of sin. And then in the beginning of chapter 5, he's talking about not showing partiality between the rich people or the oppressed people. And so I think James has this understanding right there in chapter 5. He's saying, this is what it looks like if you do it right. You pull this person away from death back to life. And specifically, here are the kind of people that we should not be marginalizing in this conversation and not showing partiality to. So,
there's this picture of Jesus. I don't know if you guys had one of these in the family. Somebody in the family 100% had one of these. It's a picture of a very white-skinned Jesus with soft, shiny curls and the blue sash over him or whatever, right? And so we have this little hippie white Jesus that we think is making crowns of flowers and putting on everybody's head. And it's peace and love. And make no mistake, Jesus did teach love, right? He's saying love God, love your neighbor. But when you say, okay, what's loving? What would Jesus do in this situation? Flipping over tables and hitting people with bullwhip is in the realm of possibility, right? He did that. And so we don't need to narrowly define what it means to love our neighbor in the, I don't want to hurt their feelings, so I'm just going to let this one go.
Yeah, that's what I was actually thinking when you were just saying that, is sometimes hurting their feeling is loving them.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what it takes to turn them.
Helping them understand, the path you're on is not the path for you, or the behavior that you're exhibiting is not going to help you.
Right.
And I think that we don't think about things like that as being loving, but sometimes that's the most loving. I mean, just like being a parent, nobody likes to discipline their children. I mean, let me tell you, I'm terrible at it.
Well, see, the problem is I have a game on Haddon's Xbox, so now when I ground him, I get to play it. But other than that, no, it's not fun.
It's good.
But it's the best thing for them. If they don't, poor little William gets it more than anybody. It's he has to understand, don't cuss your eyes at me. That's not what you do. You don't do that to adults, And it's you feel bad about it. You do, but then in the long run, if he goes to school and he's an eye cutter or he's doing all these things, he's going to get in trouble. So
that's right. It's the you've used kids for this analogy. I use often in the dog training world the electric collar, right? Same. I have an e-collar on my dog because I know that my dog likes squirrels, and if my dog goes running down the road after a squirrel, he's not got any comprehension of a car could be coming or anything like that. And so I have something to control him with. And it really is what James is saying right there. Whoever turns a sinner from the error of their way is going to save them from death and then cover a multitude of sins. You may not know it and you may not like it, but me stepping in and helping you and turning you around is the best possible outcome for you, despite what you think about it. Because in the long run, it's your tail not getting hit by a car, and maybe your kid in your analogy. But
I think here's where the tension is in my life, right? It's one thing to lovingly correct or confront someone to show them that they are wrong when it's people that we love and we want the best for. The line into sin gets blurry when I'm doing that for somebody I don't particularly care for. Sure. I can enjoy that part a little too much sometimes.
So that's a good segue to the next question I wanted to ask both of you. And I'm going to assume in this question, the question is, why do you think it's so hard to love our neighbor? I'm going to go ahead and put the undertones in the question. Why do you think it's so hard to love our worst neighbor, the one that we dislike the most? Why is that so difficult?
Because they suck.
Yeah.
Very candid.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's part of what I wanted to say in the message is like, that people suck sometimes. They're not good people. But honestly, I think for me, and I'll just speak personally, is one of the things that has aggravated my wife in our marriage, and she would tell you this, she would confirm, is that she hates how quickly I can forgive something. Like, because I've always, I think got it from my mom, just been very quick to forgive. However, I'm not very quick to forgive if you've done something to the people that I love and care about. Like, that's when I'm like, okay, now it's going to be hard for me to love. You mess me over, I'm big boy, I'll handle it, But when it's people that I'm close to, people that I love, that's hard for me to let go of. That's when I want my pound of flesh.
Yeah, that's the same thing I said, too, when I was thinking about that, is it's super easy to move on, and because our memories are short when it comes to us, and you think, well, maybe I had a piece to do with that as well. But as far as, once it comes to your kids or your family or somebody that didn't deserve it, and then you think you have to also let go of all of your past prejudices of people and just all the things that they've done over time, it makes it very difficult to say, you know what, no problem.
Yeah. I had a time when I had not been in ministry long, and I was working at the church in Mayo, and just long story short, we had a small group of people who worked with the students with us that we were very close to, some of which we're very close to this day, and they wanted to have a meeting to go over summer camp, and the essence was, hey, we don't have near enough kids signed up for this camp for the money that we've already had to pay in a deposit. What are we going to do? And we're going to have to switch plans. We had to eat a little bit of that money. I want to say that time was probably like $1,500 that we had to eat because we didn't have that gap made up or whatever. And I'll just say the meeting got a little ugly and the attacks got a little bit personal. And we left that meeting at their house with Leanne just in tears, boohooing. And I'm thinking, I'm 22, she's 21, just new to this. And I'm telling you, that fired me up as not a pastor but just as her husband. I was like, hey, we're close, we're friends. What was that? We can't make a mistake. This is what we're giving our lives to, and we can't make a mistake. And so it is like when you see the toll that somebody's words and actions have on those people that you love, man, that's tough. It takes work to get past. And from then on, it was an intentional effort to not hold that against them because they never apologized for it.
Right.
It was like, oh, I'm sorry we had to have that conversation.
Boy, nothing fires me up like that one. I'm not going to lie to you. The I'm sorry you got offended makes me want to punch somebody in the face.
Yeah.
Truly.
And so it had to be intentionally, Chip, that you're just looking for a reason to kind of push this, intentionally having to say, no, I need to back up and be as unbiased in this as I can. And it's difficult when you have to do that every single time to remind yourself to act that way.
I had and I don't have these often. I can count on one hand how many I've ever had with my parents, but we had a knockdown drag out the last time we were down there. And I told them, I said, I'm going to get in the car, I'm going to take my family, and we're going to go home. Because if I stick around, probably going to say some things I regret, and I'm probably going to be meaner than I want to be. And I want to be, I want you to understand how much this stings and all that kind of stuff. And it took about a week, and it never takes me that long. But I was hot, and it took me about a week, and I was like, I'm glad I left. I'm glad I didn't say anything, because I'm on the other side of it now. And it was not nearly as big of a deal as it felt like it was in that moment. It's still a big deal, and whatever the tension was still stings, but it was not nearly as big of a deal as it was in that moment for me when my emotions took over and things like that. And so I think one of the biggest things we can do is let time play a factor in some of those loving situations when we're trying to act loving. And sometimes one of the most loving things you can do in the moment is say, hey, I just need to step out of the situation for a minute, and I need to go over here, and I need to process, and I'll come back in a week or a couple of days or whatever.
I am not currently able to act outside of my emotions.
I say space. I'm like I said, I'm a hothead. I have to do that a lot.
Yeah.
And that's maturity. I have gotten to that point. It's taken some time to understand that now's not the best time to have this conversation. And you can write your points down, and you can come back to them. And if you feel as strong about them, then, then you can say it. But don't, speaking out of raw emotion sometimes is the worst thing you can do. There's a quote that says, "Time heals all wounds, give time."
Yeah, give time. I've heard that.
And it's true. I mean, it really will for the most part.
Yeah, I've done the whole write things down, and honestly, one of the things I've been convicted about was writing them down, because when you read 1 Corinthians 13 in that love chapter, he says,
"Love keeps no record of wrongs."
Love keeps no record of wrongs, and I caught myself being like,
"Keep it," and I'm just holding it for a little bit.
Yeah, why do you want it? And so that's one of the things that I used to be like, I'm keeping receipts. That's what the kids call it. I'm keeping receipts on this, and I'm coming back to it. But
you
that's
know what's
just
funny
not
is
how.
They say keeping receipts, but like I don't think I've ever seen a kid actually get a receipt.
No.
Yeah,
You need a receipt, and I'm good.
no, receipt is code for a grudge. I'm keeping a grudge.
Yeah.
I'm remembering the reason why I dislike you. Is really what that translates to, and I struggled with that, and I had to like, okay, AJ, not just for my wife, but in general, right? And I think it helped in my marriage, because that's where I first realized is like, you don't need to make a list here. You don't need to do that. And then it started to leak into every other relationship in my life, being like, you don't need to make a list here. Just let it, like, if it's that big of a deal, you'll remember it.
Yeah.
That's kind of thing.
I think the other tension for me that we have to kind of walk through, and that I have to walk through, is there is a certain point that you kind of just like grit your teeth and like power through. I'm going to choose to act how I know I should rather than on what I feel. And I'm not sure those feelings ever go away. But the flip side of that is, I think as we grow, not just in maturity, but in sanctification, becoming more like Jesus, that at some point we do begin maybe to genuinely feel more gracious to other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so important for us to look back and say, hey, what I have to forgive someone else of or choose to act toward them about is far less than what God has done for me. Mm-hmm. And, we were having this conversation in the office. I think that's why it's so important for us to realize who we were. Like, when we say, who we were, dead in our sins, trespasses, we don't want to beat people up, make you feel like a piece of crap. It's important, though, that you remember what it costs God to forgive you and act in kindness toward you, because it is that understanding and motivation that then can turn your heart toward others. And so that's the challenge. It's not a fake it forever, but a hopefully fake it until you make it. Like, act with intention until you're transformed from the inside out.
Well, I think the other piece of that too is you start to realize how much it's taking away from your life and causing you stress and trauma, and, not having peace by holding on to something that, I mean, at the end of the day, are they thinking about it still?
No.
Did they care?
And that fires me up too.
Yeah,
that's right. Oh, man.
Yeah.
One of the dumbest things that I have said in a long time is I looked at someone and said, I wonder if they know how much time you spend thinking about them. That was not the thing to say at that moment.
Oh, man. But it's true,
so true. Like, when you realize how much of your energy you're giving to that situation or the other person, and you finally stop, you're like, gosh, I have so much free mind space. I have so much ability to worry about other things.
Yeah. Here's one of the things that
hear me out, Dennille, not to worry about anything.
Right. Well, I'll never be. That never me.
Not the three. One of the things I learned early on that's incredibly helpful was something that goes back to that conversation about Jesus, but it's never the person who's offended that needs grace. It's always the offender that needs grace. Right. That's the nature of grace. You were the offender. You need grace. And so, yes, do I feel offended? Absolutely. That puts me in the category of the one who should be extending grace now. And that's such a tough concept to grasp. And I don't think it's a concept you fully grasp outside the picture the gospel offers. And that's why it's so important to go back to Sunday and remind yourself, no, you're not the Good Samaritan. Jesus is the Good Samaritan, and he affords this to you. And that's why we can even have the conversation about extending grace to somebody else. So,
yeah, I love that kind of turn in the parable, because forever you grow up hearing, be a good Samaritan, be the Good Samaritan, and there is part of that. Just that literally says, now go and do the same. But then to back up and realize, okay, there's a bigger picture at play here that this priest and Levite is the religious system, the keeping the law, the being a good person, and none of that was ever going to help the guy who was beaten and bloody on the side of the road. Only Jesus, the Good Samaritan, is the one who's going to come and heal those. I think, man, it's so fun as a pastor to see the light bulb go off in people's eyes. And they're like, oh, that's Jesus, and just all over the Bible. That's one of my favorite things.
Yeah, I love it. So we kind of hit on the question after this question already. So we're just going to kind of maybe park it here and then one other question on the back end. But what about you guys personally? So everybody's got hang-ups and struggles. What's one thing or one situation that you find a little bit more difficult than the rest of them in regard to loving your neighbor well? And maybe you already hit on it because you said, hey, when it comes to my family, that's where I get a little bit more offended.
Same for me too. I mean, I do have an ex-husband and I have to co-parent with, and while we have a great relationship 99% of the time, they're an ex-spouse for a reason. And there are just some things that you just totally can just lock heads on, and 99% of the time they're silly. I mean, they're misunderstandings, or they're me not thinking about his perspective or vice versa. And then once we can step out of it and we can say, hey, I was never intending to, XYZ, and then he can say, well, I interpreted it as this.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that is one of my hardest situations is, you both love the child. You both want to do what's best, and you want to give them everything that you can possibly give them. And sometimes that means,
hey, that's Leviticus 19. Rebuke your neighbor directly.
Yeah. Well,
it's like, hey, buddy, here's the issue. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
You're right. When you have those conversations and get it out there, usually
you feel
the issue's not the issue.
Right. It's not. And it's whatever underlying, situation that you have going on, or that you do have resentment for, whether it be 5, 10, 15, 20, there's a lot of people that still, can't be in the same room as their ex-spouse, and I hate that all the way around. Unfortunately, that's not a scenario that I'm in. But, when I think about having to give somebody grace and have to really try hard to think about other perspectives, because it's real easy to go to, he was just trying to aggravate me. He was trying to hurt me, and it has nothing to do with me.
I will say, hats off to you guys for, working together for the kids, because I think one of the saddest scenarios is when the kids are used as a tool.
And it's so stressful for them.
Those relationships.
Yeah.
I just hate seeing that. So when you can hey, you and I may have to talk about some things directly for the good of the kids, I think that's the best case scenario right there.
I have a friend of mine, not worth naming any names, but they're in a situation, they co-parent, and it's gotten all the way to the legal point. There's manipulation, and the kid is the leverage. It's just it is sad. It's terrible, and it's literally wrecking lives, and I hate it. So yeah, hats off to you guys.
So yeah, that's what I would say for anybody else that's living in that situation. That it's a hard situation, especially in the beginning. But again, going back to the time heals all wounds. You kind of move on and
give time.
Yeah, and it can get better.
It's good. I love it. I'll round out with this question. In light of that, give me your hot takes, your best 2 cents. Okay, tomorrow, I heard this sermon on Sunday. I listened to the podcast on Tuesday or whatever. It's Wednesday. How do I go be a good neighbor? What does it look like for me to go be a good neighbor? How do I do that?
Okay, both of you are looking at me. I think, the way that you go be a good neighbor is just as simple as we talked about on Sunday and mentioned on the podcast. Don't ask who's my neighbor. Just start asking who can I be a neighbor to.
Yeah.
I got to say this. And this is going to tell on myself a little bit, but it's going to brag on somebody else. So there's a young man. He's a senior in high school. He attends the Lake City location. He started attending because he started dating one of the girls whose families attended the Lake City location.
Whatever it takes.
And
whatever it takes.
All things to all people. And after church, I had to go by Publix to pick up a grocery order. And so I'm sitting in the truck, and the girl from Publix is loading the groceries in the back, and he is in the car, next to me, and his Publix order comes up, and homeboy gets out of his car, goes around to this girl, and just takes stuff and helps her start loading it in his car. And I'm like, 2 things. I'm like, number one, man, that's super impressive, He didn't have to do that. Look at him. I think, hey, who can I be a neighbor to? I can help here. Number two, made me feel like a piece of crap because I'm just sitting right there in the car.
Just watching this 80-year-old
And I'm like,
movies,
oh,
it's the car.
man. No, not an 80-year-old, maybe a 25-year-old. But anyway, case in point, I wasn't looking for how I could be a good neighbor in that moment. So that never crossed my mind. And I'm not sure he would have told you I was looking for how I can be a neighbor. I can tell you he had just left church, and that was what we talked about. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's a good way, a simple way to put this in practice. Don't ask, who do I have to do this for, right? Because that was who do I have to do this for? Ask, who can I do this for? It's not that I have to, I get to. And that mind shift kind of changes everything.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I mean, I think just being intentional about who you're in contact with, what they could be going through, whether they're saying it or not, what you just never know. Like we said earlier, you don't know what's happening in people's lives. Just showing just simple acts of kindness and, empathy and just acting interested. Sometimes, especially with, kids, I've learned with being at the schools and stuff, sometimes they just want somebody to talk to them and just care about them. And they don't always get that. And, that's one thing I think we all forget is because our children are in loving homes and they have parents that are interested in everything they do. But not everybody has that. And so just even something as small as, how was your day? Or what did you learn today? Or, anything like that can make a big impact on somebody.
Yeah, it's good.
I think you'll realize just how selfish you are when that starts to bug you. Like it starts to bug you that you don't want to go out of your way and listen to somebody else. And I think that'll be a good tell. Like, okay, maybe my first step in being a good neighbor is giving other people time and margin in my life. And
that's right.
That's a good starting point. So.
That's right. This is that Tim Keller quote that we used in the little video we recorded before the series, but I think it's still so good. Always two things you're going to be wrong about. How sinful you are. You're always going to be worse than you realize. And as you get older, those layers get peeled back and you're like, man, I am a pretty selfish piece of crap who won't help somebody unload my Instacrap order.
The crap.
That's what I said. But the second thing is, in spite of all that, we're still loved more than we can imagine because the love of God toward us is not dependent upon us not being a piece of crap.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the beauty of the gospel. Well, good. Dennille, it was good to have you with us.
Thanks,
I appreciate
guys.
it.
Yeah, had a great time.
I want you to hear me say this publicly. You crushed it. You did a great job.
After 5 takes.
Yeah, he's still making up for it.
Yeah, that's good. Any concluding thoughts that you guys would share or want to share? No?
Nah.
Okay.
What? So one thing.
Okay.
Still sweet and sour. You're sticking with that flavor?
Yeah, I'm sticking with it.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
We'll vet that this week.
Okay.
We'll get in touch with the people closest to you and we'll see what they say. All right. Well, good. Well, we will catch you guys same time, same place next week.
See ya.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Let's Talk About That. We hope it encouraged and challenged you as we continue to grow in this journey of faith and embrace community. If you have more questions, thoughts, or feedback, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us through our social media channels or visit our website and stay connected. Your questions are what make this podcast a dynamic and enriching experience. If you found today's discussion meaningful, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Your engagement helps us spread the message and connect with others who may find value in these conversations. Until next time, we hope this episode inspired you and will help you bring Sunday's message into your week ahead. Keep the conversation alive, and remember, we're all on this journey together.